Recall that our newsboy collected some data over the past several months. Plotting that data and producing a histogram, we see that it's a approximately normal distribution with this right skew and a potential outlier there. But if you calculate the mean and standard deviation of the data with and without that outlier, it really doesn't change the mean and the standard deviation all that much. So let's go ahead and model this particular situation using a normal distribution with a mean of 4405 and a standard deviation of 260. I'm going to use an online calculator just for a moment to help you remember some things about the normal distribution. In our case here, we've got a mean of 4405 and a standard deviation of 260. If we know a probability, then we can find out the x value that is associated with that probability. Here I put in a probability of 0.75, and it says that the x that matches up with that is 4580. If we put in a probability of 25%, then the x is further down on the scale there, about 4230. So how can we use this information to come up with the demand for our newsboy? Well, if we can come up with a way in Excel to generate randomly these probabilities, then we can use the normal distribution to tell us what the x or the demand would be for that probability. Now let's do that. Excel has a pretty good tool for generating random numbers, and it is the RAND function, which is just RAND and a opening and closing parentheses with nothing in between. And that's what I put in this cell that I label random variable. For dealing with the normal distribution, if we have a probability, the function we need to use is the norm inverse. And I've got it here, and I'm just going to click on it for a second, and it'll open up and it'll tell us, remind us that the arguments for the norm inverse are a probability, the mean, and the standard deviation. So we have those now. We're going to use the random variable to give us the probability, and then we know the mean and standard deviation thanks to the newsboy's records. I'm going to manually recalculate the spreadsheet. You can see every time I do, the random variable changes, and it's always going to be between 0 and 1, which of course allows us to use that as a probability. And the norm inverse is returning x values based on that probability that are going to fit into that distribution that our good newsboy provided us with. Now here, what I've done, and I like to do in my model, I like to build my random variables outside my model and then link to them so that it keeps my model fairly simple. The only thing I've added, you can see here I've linked down here to B25, which is this output of the norm inverse. I wanted to round that because we can't sell fractional newspapers. And I used the round function to 0 decimal places to turn that fractional value there of 4496.67 into a discrete value. And you can see as we recalculate this that we don't see the profit changing very often because so far the demand is higher than the amount that our newsboy is buying. There, I finally hit one that has the demand lower than the quantity, and it shows his profit changed a bit. So how do we automate that? You can't just manually click recalculate, and capture these values. There's a way to do that, and I'll show you in the next video.